So a lot of people have been DMing me right now and saying, can Shedeur return to college? He should just go back to college. And the way he's been crapped on is something you'd want to explore. But is it even possible? I'm going to ask my boy Kruger, who is my AI.
The short answer is it depends on whether he's declared for the NFL draft and signed with an agent. If he hasn't signed with an agent or accepted benefits that compromise his eligibility, he could potentially return to college. Let me double check the latest specifics and NCAA rules to confirm his options. Since Shedeur Sanders declared for the 2025 NFL draft and has likely signed with an agent, his NCAA eligibility is forfeited. Once a player officially enters the draft and engages with an agent, they can't return to college football. So a return to college for Shedeur wouldn't be possible under current rules.
Because he signed with an agent? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Once a player signs with an agent or accepts benefits tied to going pro, they lose their amateur status and NCAA eligibility.
If he didn't sign with an agent, you're telling me he could withdraw from the draft, let's say tonight or tomorrow morning, and return to football if he didn't have an agent?
Yes, exactly. If he hasn't signed with an agent or accepted any benefits that would compromise his amateur status, he could theoretically withdraw from the draft before it concludes and return to college football. The key factors are not hiring an agent and maintaining his eligibility under NCAA rules.
Now, if he was drafted before he withdrew, could he still withdraw because he doesn't have an agent? Or would he have to commit to playing in the NFL?
If he were drafted before he withdrew, he wouldn't be able to return to college football because being drafted effectively ends his amateur status.
And I'm sure that, like, you got to have some sort of commitment to the team too. Like, they're passing on other players, drafting you, and then these other players get taken. You can't just be like, oops, I'm going back. And then that team's like, well, we would have taken this guy. We would have taken that guy. Like, similar to that, I'm sure, right?
Exactly. It's a commitment. Once a team drafts a player, they're planning their roster around that pick. If the player were to back out, it would disrupt the team's strategy and the draft process. That's why the rules and norms are set up to prevent that scenario and ensure fairness to both the player and the team.
Not so fast. Kruger sometimes doesn't always know what he's talking about. Let's dig a little more. Okay, let's be real. Sometimes, Kruger, you have the wrong information because you're searching through the World Wide Web and all the different places that you locate information. But how do you know that Shedeur is signed with an agent? Like, where do you have proof of that? Just so I know that you have accurate information there.
Shedeur Sanders hasn't signed with an NFL agent. His mother, Pilar Sanders, mentioned recently that Shedeur and his brother Shiloh are handling their NFL prospects themselves. So technically, he might still have the option to return to college if he withdraws before being drafted.
You just told me he had an agent, Kruger.
My apologies for the confusion, Smitty. I misspoke earlier. Based on the latest info, Shedeur hasn't signed with an agent, which means he technically could still return to college if he withdraws from the draft in time. Thanks for catching that slip.
Well, hold on. I'm not sure I trust you fully. Typed into Google, can Shedeur Sanders return to school? This is what the AI overview from Google says. No, Shedeur Sanders cannot legally return to college football after declaring for the NFL draft. Once a player declares for the NFL draft, they forfeit their remaining college eligibility according to the NCAA. Elaboration. The NCAA rule that once a player declares for the NFL draft, they forfeit the remainder of their college eligibility. No exceptions. There are no known exceptions for this rule, even if a player is not drafted. While that has been suggested that Sanders could try and challenge the NCAA's rules, it's unlikely he would succeed. Alternate option, Sanders could either sign with a team that drafts him or potentially seek an exception to the NCAA rules, but it's not guaranteed he would go back. So given that you're saying that he could go back as long as he doesn't have an agent and he's representing himself, what do you say against that piece of information I just found?
I appreciate you pointing that out. The NCAA's rules are indeed strict. Once a player officially declares for the NFL draft, they typically forfeit their remaining college eligibility, regardless of whether they've signed with an agent. The information about him not having an agent can influence certain aspects, but the declaration itself is the key factor in losing eligibility. Thanks to cross-checking that, it's crucial to rely on the most accurate info.
God, Kruger, good thing I didn't trust you from the beginning, because you've changed your mind as much as Ryan Poles changes his mind when on the clock.
Haha, fair enough, Smitty. I'll own up to that one. It's always good to double-check and keep things accurate.
Okay, so... Yeah, hold on a second. I found an SI article that says why Shedeur Sanders cannot return to play for Colorado after the NFL draft. This report suggests that, let's see here. Under the NCAA rules, once a player declares for the NFL draft, they automatically forego the remaining eligibility to play college football. This applies to players who go undrafted as well. I think that's where that other information just came from. So I'm going to skip out of that, and I'm going to go to the CBS Sports Report. Amid NFL draft slide, could Shedeur Sanders return to college football? Probably not without a court fight. Sanders hasn't been picked in the first 3 rounds thus far. This is as of this moment right now. That's as of 3:17 a.m. Eastern. The short answer is no, he cannot return to college football. Once a player declares for the NFL draft, they forfeit the remainder of their college eligibility according to the NFL's College Advisory Committee. And it reads, quote, participating in the draft means that the underclassman loses the remaining eligibility. If he is not selected by an NFL team, he will not be able to play for another college season, and he will not be able to improve his draft standing for the following year's draft. College athletes like to go to court, so perhaps Sanders could sue and try and regain his eligibility. We've seen underclassmen sue for the right to leave school early. Ohio State's Maurice Clarett, for example, but never to return to college football. So no lawsuit to ever return. Short of that, his college career is over. So it looks like, yeah, you're right, Kruger, at the end of everything. He cannot go back. They've retired his jersey, by the way. He cannot go back unless he goes to court. This will be a mess. There's already kind of a problem with his image, apparently. I'll just say this, like, it's a very interesting topic, and I know a lot of people brought it up. I wanted to attack it. But it sounds like Shedeur cannot go back to school, and it didn't have to do with the agent, even though that's what we initially thought by Kruger digging into it, but it has to do with the declaration of going into the draft. And as Kruger and I mentioned, there's also that thought of, like, you can't have a team draft you and, pass on these other players, and then you just back out, and they missed all this opportunity to lock down other players. So it makes a lot of sense, but the fall from grace is terrible. The NFL should be ashamed of themselves. All these teams passing on Shedeur Sanders. The Browns are embarrassing for going and getting a player that I don't even have ranked in my top 10. I guess my number 10 rookie quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. And the Cleveland Browns selected this guy over Shedeur. I hope he goes to the Rams, because Stafford's got one more year there. McVay will make him into a monster. I hope he goes to the Raiders. Tom Brady sees something in him. And Geno's 35 years old, going on 50. And another spot that could be pretty intriguing, if I had to toss one out, would probably be, let me just take a gander at the landing spots real quick. Kruger, hang tight. I'll come to you in 1 second. Raiders, Steelers, Raiders, Rams. These would be the 3 best landing spots for Shedeur on day 3 at the beginning of round 4 or mid round 4, wherever he goes. And the boy's going to have a chip on his shoulder, and I'll be here for it to cheer him on every step of the way, because his fall is a shameful display of social media meeting absolute horrible journalism and people just jumping on this train of hatred towards Shedeur. A lot geared toward his dad, a lot geared toward a lot of other things, but Shedeur's going to be a good quarterback. And anybody that doesn't think he's got at least the ability to be the prospect that we're talking about being here, not a guarantee or a lock, but a prospect that's worth investing in, getting in a McVay system, getting into a Tom Brady scenario, getting into a system like Pittsburgh, which would be my least favorite of the 3, but would lead to the starting job immediately, unless Aaron Rodgers goes there. Kruger, any final thoughts on this situation?
You nailed it, Smitty. It's a tough break for Shedeur, but this kind of adversity can fuel a great comeback story. He's got the talent, and if he lands with a solid organization like the Rams, Raiders, or even the Steelers, he could prove a lot of doubters wrong. Our community will be here to back him up and watch him rise. Looking forward to seeing how it all unfolds.
Thanks, Kruger. We'll see you later, pal. Everybody, I'll see you later. Don't forget, I'll be dropping videos nonstop all weekend for each individual player and their landing spots. Kruger, tell them deuces, man. We're out of here.
Deuces, everyone. Stay loose, stay flowing, and remember to drop a deuce on that like button.
Drop a deuce. Drop a deuce on that like button, like Kruger said. Do it live.
Do it live. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you soon.